All right, let's jump right into this explainer. If you've ever felt like you're just talking in circles on a discovery call and ultimately losing the deal, well, this is absolutely for you. There's this really persistent old myth in sales that the best talker wins. But the truth? It's actually the exact opposite. In sales, the rep who talks the most loses. It's the rep who asks the best questions that wins the most deals. So today we're going to master the art of questioning. We'll look at how to use questions not just to gather data, but to truly unlock customers, surface their real needs, and create just unstoppable buying momentum.
Because there's a massive shift happening right now in how buyers want to be treated. Get this, 73% of them feel more positive about a rep who asks great questions compared to one who just pitches. I mean, it makes sense, right? They don't want a monologue. They want a highly relevant conversation. When a customer answers a great question, they aren't just handing you data. They're actually moving themselves closer to a decision.
And the efficiency of this approach is just staggering. Reps actually gather 2.4 times more information per minute simply by using open questions instead of closed ones. Basically, he who asks leads. You're extracting more than double the context, the nuance, and the leverage in the exact same amount of time just by changing the structure of your sentence. But here's the crucial point, and it's a somewhat shocking stat. 60% of buying decisions happen during the discovery conversation long before the pitch even starts. I mean, let that sink in for a second. By the time you load up your fancy presentation deck, the customer has pretty much already made up their mind, based entirely on the quality of the questions you just asked them. So, how do you capture that 60%? Well, top producers use a very deliberate, structured architecture called the AIIA solution framework. It's a specific methodology that deliberately takes customers from just being curious to fully committed, all in a single conversation. It treats questioning as what it really is, one of the most vital, yet frankly underinvested, skills in the industry.
Think about the massive difference in the power dynamic here. On one side, you have rep-led statements like, our platform saves you 10 hours a week. That is just a pitch. But on the other side, you have customer-led questions like, how many hours a week does your team spend on this manually? The statement forces you, the rep, to do all the heavy lifting of persuasion. But the question? That invites the customer to persuade themselves.
So here's our clear roadmap for today. We're going to cover Step 1, open questions, Step 2, probing questions, Step 3, clarifying questions, Step 4, impact questions, and then we'll tie it all together in the ultimate question flow. Think of these 4 steps as a natural progression. You start broad to invite them in. You probe to go deeper beneath the surface. You clarify to ensure you understand exactly what's going on. And then you use impact questions to surface the true cost of their problem. Each step has a very specific job, building logically on the last.
All right, Step 1, open questions.
These are your vital entry point. They signal genuine interest, and they can never be answered with just a simple yes or no. You've got your 5 starter words here. If you want to know their current state, start with what. If you want the mechanics, use how. But look at that last one, walk me. When you say walk me through what happens when this breaks down, you aren't just getting a one-word answer. You're extracting an entire sequential narrative. You're giving them the floor to share freely.
Moving right along to Step 2, probing questions.
Now, I have to give you a strict warning here. Never, ever accept the customer's first answer as the complete picture. The most valuable insights always live just beneath that surface. You've got 4 specific probing moves to get down there. You can drill down on a specific word they used, ask them to expand to give you more context, ask for a concrete example to make things real, or throw out a hypothetical, like asking what they do if a certain constraint was completely gone. The goal is to dig deep.
Next up is Step 3, clarifying questions.
You can kind of think of this as your essential quality control check. Customers constantly speak in vague terms, and you just can't nod and move on. If they say something takes a lot of time, what does that actually mean? Is it 10 minutes or 10 hours? You have to clarify by asking, when you say a lot, how many hours per week are we talking? If they say it's complicated, ask what specifically makes it complicated. Reps who skip this step almost always end up pitching the wrong solution because they just fundamentally misunderstood the vague language. You've got to make the vague precise.
Which brings us to Step 4, impact questions.
This right here is the most powerful question type in your entire arsenal. Impact questions take that problem you've just clarified and make its cost viscerally real. Because let's be honest, people don't change based on logic alone. They change when the pain of staying the same is worse than the discomfort of changing. You can measure this across 5 dimensions: time, money, risk, team, and opportunity. Now remember to always use an empathetic, curious tone here. Your job isn't to be aggressive or fabricate urgency. It's to ask the question, stay totally quiet, and let the customer calculate their own painful costs.
Finally, let's look at the ultimate question flow.
Let's see how these separated pieces seamlessly fuse together in a real-world conversation. The rep starts broad. This is our step 1, the open question. Notice that starter word, what? The rep is giving the floor entirely to the customer, inviting them to lay out their situation without boxing them in.
And the customer responds with a pretty classic surface-level admission. They've got a fragile spreadsheet process. Now, it's good info, but an amateur rep would stop right here and immediately pitch a CRM solution. We are definitely not going to do that.
Instead, the rep brilliantly uses a probing question to go one level deeper. They heard "try to remember," and they want to know exactly what happens downstream when that fragile process inevitably fails.
So the customer confesses to a leak, but look really closely at the language here. They said they lose a few good ones. Well, as we learned in step 3, few is dangerously vague. To a small business, a few is 2. To an enterprise, a few could be 50. This requires immediate intervention.
So the rep deploys the clarifying question. This is that quality control check in action. They pin down the exact scope, uncovering that it's actually 5 to 10 decent opportunities lost every single week. Now we've got a solid, precise number. It's time for the final move.
Boom! The dramatic impact question. The rep takes that named, clarified problem, 5 to 10 lost leads, and forces the customer to confront the true financial weight of doing nothing. The rep doesn't tell them what it costs. The rep asks them to do the math.
And suddenly, the customer arrives at this massive, incredibly uncomfortable realization entirely on their own. They realize it's costing them $15,000 to $20,000 a month. That perfectly proves the immense persuasive power of asking over pitching. If the rep had just said, "Our software saves you money," it would have meant absolutely nothing. By guiding them through open, probe, clarify, and impact, the customer literally generated a $20,000 reason to buy all by themselves.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. I want you to look at your own discovery process. Are your questions just a checklist to gather data so you can rush into your pitch? Or are you using the AIIA frameworks to actively build urgency, clarify vague language, and activate decisions? Remember, the rep who talks the most loses, but the rep who asks the best questions wins. Make sure those questions count.